Hello students, today we're going to talk about mean absolute deviation. Okay. I'm doing this a little differently today, so I'm doing this on the computer so my pen won't be quite as smooth, so just kind of bear with me because I'm working with a mouse today so you can see the calculator. So why are we learning mean absolute deviation? Well, our standard is 811b, and it says that we're going to determine the mean absolute deviation and use this quantity as a measure of the average distance data are from the mean using a data set of no more than 10 data points. So that's what we have to learn today. So before we do that though, let's do a warm-up reviewing scientific notation. So what I'd like for you to do is write this chart down, pause the video, and then answer each of the questions. So if it's given to you in standard form, I want you to write it in scientific. If it's given to you in scientific, I want you to write it in standard form. So pause the video and answer those 4 questions. Okay, so let's see how you did. So on this one, I am going to just type it in, so just kind of bear with me again on this. So the first thing that we're looking for when we're dealing with scientific notation and translating something from standard form to scientific is we want the significant digits. And in this particular number, we have these 3 numbers right here, the 506, be our significant digits. So let me come over here and write those down. So I'm going to write 506. And now what we need to do is we need to place a decimal in this number so that its value is between 1 and 10, just like we've been doing. So I'm going to place a decimal right here. So now it's between 1 and 10. And then times, and then we're always going to write times 10 because that's what moves our decimal around. And I'm going to do a little caret key for my exponent. And now we need to ask those 3 questions. Okay, where was my decimal originally? Well, it's right here. Where did I move it to? Right here. And how many numbers are in between? 9. So our exponent is 9. Okay, so 5.06 times 10 to the 9th. Now that's a big number, so we have a positive exponent. So now, in a small number, such as this one, we're going to use a negative exponent. So we still look at the significant digits, and in this particular one, we have the 302. So 302, then I need to place a decimal in this number so that its value would be between 1 and 10. So it's going to go right here. And then I do times 10, or space times 10, then the exponent. But this time, we have a negative exponent because it's a small number. So we ask ourselves the same question though. Where was my decimal? Where did I move it to? How many spaces in between? And there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 places. So we would write negative 7 as our exponent. Now if I already have the number written in scientific notation, we just have to translate it. So I told you in a big number, because this is a big number because it's got a positive exponent, I'll start all the way over here to the side, okay, to the far left-hand side, and I'll write my numbers, 4, 0, 6, 7. Because those are my significant digits. Now I need to determine how many zeros I'm going to add. Now we know this exponent tells me how many places to move the decimal. So it says I'm going to move it 8. So I moved it around the 3 numbers, 1, 2, 3 first. And how many more do I have to go? 5. So I need to add 5 zeros. Just like that, and that's that number. Now you could come back through and add in your commas to make the number easier to read, and that would be very nice. Okay, so now in this one, we've got a 2. Okay, now in this particular one, what we have to do is we've got to write our 2, but I've got to move my decimal 12 places to the left. So we find where our decimal is, and my decimal's right here. Okay, and so I'm going to move it around the 2, which is one of those places, and I need to add 11 zeros to this. So in this one, because of the way you have to do this to type it, I actually have to start on the left. So I've got 11 zeros. Okay, and then 1 more 2. Okay, so the way you kind of make this nicer is you do kind of put spaces in there, but I'm not going to go back and do that. So that would be each of my numbers written in scientific notation. Okay, so hopefully you remember that and you get your assignment turned in by Saturday night at midnight. Okay, now let's talk about our mean absolute deviation. So here we go. Now in order for us to find mean absolute deviation, we have to understand a couple things. Okay, it is a statistical measure, so we need to understand mean, median, mode, and range. Now that's something old that you have talked about. Okay, it's back 5th and 6th grade. You did this kind of stuff. So let's go through this. Mean, what is that? It's not just your math teacher. Okay, mean is actually the average of your numbers. And what we have to do to find mean is we've got to add up all of our numbers and divide by how many numbers we have. Okay, median. Median is just like that thing that you have out on the interstate. It's that grassy area out there, that median. Okay, it's the thing in the middle. Okay, so median, you have to do two things to find it. Okay, one, you have to place your numbers in numerical order, and then you find the exact middle. Okay, so if there's an odd number of numbers, like you've got 5 numbers, or you have 7 numbers, or so on, okay, then there will be an actual number that's in the middle. But if you have an even set, like 10 digits, like this one right here, 10 numbers, then there's not going to be an exact middle. So you take the 2 that are in the middle, and you add them up and divide by 2. Okay? The mode is the one that occurs the most often. Whichever number occurs more than any other is the mode. Now you can't have more than one mode of a data set. So if I have 2 numbers that are going to occur the same number of times and they're the most, then you may have 2 modes in the data, and that's okay. You can have 1 mode, you can have 2 modes, you can have 3 modes, but after 3 you don't worry about it anymore. And then of course the range is going to be the highest number minus the lowest number. It's how spread out is your numbers. Okay, so what I'd like for you to do then is find for me the mean, median, mode, and range of the data set. Now the nice thing is we can use a calculator for this. Okay, so I'd like for you to pause the video and see if you can find the mean, median, mode, and range using your graphing calculator. Okay, so let's find out how you did. So here is the mean. So let's see if we can find the mean of this data set. So what we're going to do is we're going to type this into the calculator. There's 10 of them, so I'm then going to divide the sum by 10. So I come over here and I do 56. Okay, and you can actually use just the numbers on your keyboard on your computer to be able to do that. So plus 75, plus 77, plus 77, plus 86, plus 89, plus 91, plus 97, plus 100. I think I have all 10, so I hit enter. I get 816. Now we're going to take that number and divide it by 10 because there are 10 data points in our data. And we end up with a mean of 81.6. So hopefully you came up with that same value. Okay. Now, in order for us to find the median, we're going to have to do something with our data set. We actually need to put our data in order. Excuse me. To find the median. So we look up here and we find the smallest number. And if you look here, I've already put the numbers in order for you. Okay? So that makes it very simple for us to do. Okay, so let's see if I can grab this and move it to where I need it to. Okay, so the 2 numbers in the middle, and what you've learned in the past is to do this. You cross the first one out, cross the last one out, and then you cross one on each end, cross, 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 and then you find the 2 in the middle. Okay, so what we have to do to find the 2 in the middle, or to find the average of those, is we're going to add those 2 and divide by 2. So we'd come over to our calculator and we'd do 77 plus 86, enter, and then divide that by 2, and that will give us our median. And our median is 81.5. Okay? So median and the mean are sometimes pretty close together. It all depends on how your numbers are. Okay? But the median will always split your data into 2 even parts. So that means that at 81.5, that is the middle of that data, where we have an equal number of numbers on the left as we do on the right. Okay? The mean, however, will kind of be skewed one way or the other depending upon how big the numbers are, how small the numbers are. So now let's talk about the mode. Now the mode is the one that occurs most often. So you look down your data and you find, are there any numbers that duplicate? And you find out that right here we've got 77. So our mode is actually 77. And we don't have any other numbers that double, so 77 is our mode. Okay, so we only have one mode in this set of data. All right, and then we've got one last question to look at, and that would be the range. And the range is nothing but the high number minus the low number. So it tells us how spread out our data is. So we take our 100 and we subtract 56 from it, and we end up with 44. And that is our range. So now that we know how to find each of these data points, the mean is the average, add them up and divide. The median is put them in order first, and then find the one that's in the middle. Okay? Sometimes there may be more than one in the middle, and we've got to add them up and divide by 2. The mode is the one that occurs most often, and the range is the one that is the highest minus the lowest. Today we're going to look at mean absolute deviation. And the first word in that is the key, the mean. Okay, so we're going to do something with the average of these numbers. That's what we need to understand. Now, absolute means that we're going to be very positive about it, and it's going to be a positive value. Because if you remember, absolute value is always positive because it's a distance. So this says average distance, okay? And then the deviation is actually the word that represents distance. So it's the average positive distance a number is from the mean. And that's what we want to know, okay? And right here, that's what it basically says. Mean absolute deviation, or MAD, of a data set is the average distance between each data value and the mean. The mean absolute deviation is a way to describe variation or amount of change in a data set. So pause the video and write that definition down, please. Okay, now let's find out how do we do this. Okay, there's a 3-step process that we will use to calculate mean absolute deviation. The first is we find the mean of our data. Okay, so that means we're going to add up all of our data and divide by how many data points we have. Second, we're then going to find the positive distance each value, each one of our data points, is from the mean. So basically we subtract the mean from each value and take the positive version of that. And then the last that we do is we find the mean of our distances, or our differences, okay? So let's look at an example, okay, and then we'll do one. Okay, so here is an example. Okay, we've got a data set of 3, 6, 6, 7, 8, 11, 15, and 16. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to take all those data points and we're going to add them up to get 72. And then we're going to divide by how many data points there are, 8, and we get 9 as our mean. Okay? So what we want to do then is we want to take each one of our data values and subtract it from the mean, or subtract the mean from it. So we're going to do 3 minus 9. Okay? 3 minus 9 gives us 6. And then 6 minus 9 gives us 3. 6 minus 9 gives us 3. 7 minus 9 gives us 2. 8 minus 9 gives us 1. 11 minus 9 gives us 2. 15 minus 9 gives us 6. And 16 minus 9 gives us 7. So here are all the differences, which is the distance the number is from the mean. And then what we're going to do, and you're going to see that's kind of what our differences are. Okay, we're going to take those differences, we're going to add those up and divide by 8 as well, since there were 8 data points. So the mean absolute deviation of this data set is 3.75. So the smaller that number, the smaller our deviation is, the closer our data is together. The bigger that number, the farther the data points are spread out. Okay, so it gives us a way to tell whether or not our data is good or not. Okay, so if our data is kind of tight and it has a small mean deviation, then that's a good data set. If it's a big number, then that means your data is kind of spread out and it's not really that great. Okay, so it's a way to kind of tell whether or not your data is good. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to actually do one. This is like what your assignment will be like. Okay, so I'm going to give you some data and I want you to find the mean absolute deviation. So here's what we're going to do. First thing we're going to do is we're going to write our data down. So 10, 7, 13, 10, 8. Now I apologize for the writing again, because again I'm writing on the computer with a mouse, and my writing leaves a lot to be desired when using the mouse. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to take this data set and we're going to find the mean. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to go 10 plus 7 plus 13 plus 10 plus 8. Enter. And I get 48. So then I'm going to divide that by 5 and get 9.6. So the mean is going to be 9.6 all the way down. So 9.6, 9.6, 9.6, 9.6, 9.6. And now what we're going to do is we're going to subtract these. Okay, so I'm going to come over here on my calculator. I'm going to do 10 minus 9.6, enter. And I'm going to write that down, 0.4. And then I'm going to do the next one. Okay, so 7 minus 9.6, enter, and I get negative 2.6. But what I want is the positive difference, so I'm not going to pay any attention to that negative. Actually, if we do this one, we get the negative 2.6, we'll have the positive value over here. So this positive value was 0.4, this positive value was 2.6. Okay, so now we do the next one, 12 minus 9.6. We end up with 2.4. So 2.4. So 2.4. Okay, and then do the same thing here, 10 minus 9.6. Enter, and we get 0.4 again. So 0.4, 0.4, because it's positive. And then 8 minus 9.6. We end up with negative 1.6. So we write that as 1.6. And now what we're going to do is we're going to take these positive values, these positive differences, we're going to add those up. Okay, so I'm going to go 0.4 plus 2.6 plus 2.4 plus 0.4 plus 1.6. Hit enter. That gives me a sum of 7.4. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to take that value, 7.4, and we're going to divide it by 5. So divide by 5, enter, because there's 5 data points, which is our count right there. And then the mean absolute deviation is 1.48, and that's all there is to it. Okay, so 3 steps. Find the mean of your data set. Okay, find the mean. Then find the difference between your data point and your mean. Take the positive version of that number, add those up, divide that by how many numbers you have, and that is your mean absolute deviation. Okay, let's try one more of these, and then you'll be ready for your assignment. So this one, we've got another 5 data points. Okay, so let me type those data points in. So come right up here, and this is how you're going to do the ones on your assignment. So you'll type in 110, 114, 104, 108, and 106. Okay, now those didn't quite fit, but they do okay for what we need to do. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to find the mean of my data. So I'm going to come over to my calculator and type those in. So 110, 110 plus 114 plus 104 plus 108 plus 106. Okay, so we've got those data points in there, so we hit enter, and we find the sum. Now the sum is 542, but that's not what I want yet. What I really want is the mean, so that means I need to divide 542 by 5 because there are 5 data points. So we just hit divide by 5, enter, and you end up with 108.4. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here into my spreadsheet, and I'm going to type in 108.4, 108.4, 108.4, all the way down. Okay, so let me line those up a little bit better. Now what we're going to attempt to do is find the difference between those. Okay, so I'm going to take my calculator, and I'm going to do 110 minus 108.4, and hit enter, and we end up with 1.6. So that's what I'm going to type in to this spot right here, 1.6. And I'm going to do the same for the next one. Okay, so 114 minus 108.4, enter, and you end up with 5.6. And you'll do that all the way down. Okay. If you get negative ones, you just type in a negative value. And the next one would be Okay, so you should end up with those values. So even if you end up with negative numbers, that is okay. Okay, so you just subtract them just like always. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to take these differences and we need to have the positive value of each one. Okay, so this would be 1.6, and then 5.6, and 4.4, and then 0.4, and then 2.4, because I need the positive difference. Now, in order for us to find the mean absolute deviation, we're now going to add these numbers up and find their average. So 1.6, oops, typed on the wrong thing there. 1.6 plus 5.6 plus 4.4 plus 0.4 plus 2.4. And then hit enter. And so that is our sum. So we will put the sum right here in the sum spot, 14.4. The count is just how many numbers did I have in my data set. So in this particular one I had 5. Now for my mean absolute deviation, what I'm going to do is I'm going to now take the sum, which is the 14.4, and I'm going to divide that by 5. And we have a mean absolute deviation of 2.88. Well, my numbers don't want to type right. 2.88, and that's my mean absolute deviation. And that's really all there is to it. Okay, so now I want to look at what you're going to do on your assignment. Okay, and then I'll let you go to work. Okay, so your assignment is going to be a Google form. Okay, so you go into Classroom, select, and this particular is my second period class. So you go into the Classroom, the mean absolute deviation post, and click on the Google Sheet. Okay, and when that comes up, this is what it's going to look like. And you'll notice it's very similar to that form that we were working on just a few moments ago. Okay, so what you'll do is you'll come over into the data set. Okay, and under the data, you're going to type in your data values. So you would type in 1, 1, 3, 5, 5, 6, 8, and 11. Then you would go to your calculator and you would type those in. So you would do 1 plus 1 plus 3 plus 5 plus 5 plus 6 plus 8 plus 11. And I messed up there royally, didn't I? Oh my goodness. So let's try this again. 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 3 plus 5 plus 5 plus 6 plus 8 plus 11. Let's see, did I get them all? 1, 2, 3. Got them all there. We hit enter. We get an amount of 40, but that's not my mean. My mean, that's the sum, so now I need to find the mean, so I divide that value by 8, because that's how many data points we have, and we end up with 5. So you would then come into your mean here, and you would type 5 all the way down the list. Now for your difference, you're going to take the data value and subtract the mean from it. So you'll do 1 minus 5, 1 minus 5, 3 minus 5, 5 minus 5, and so on, all the way down. Okay, whether it's positive or negative, you just write the difference down. Then you're going to find the positive values. So whatever these values are in the difference, you'll then just rewrite them as positive values. Now the sum is very simple. That just means add these together. So you're going to add all the positive values up and put it in the sum spot. The count is just, again, it's the number of data points we had. So in this case, we would have 8. And then all you have to do is take your sum and your count, divide them, and that will give you your mean absolute deviation. And that's all we're doing on this particular assignment. Okay? So today we've talked about mean absolute deviation. It's not difficult. It's just kind of long. And what we got to remember, there's 3 steps to doing it. 1, you find the mean of all the values. So whatever your data happens to be, you find the mean. Okay? Then you're going to find the positive distance each value is from the mean. So in other words, you're going to subtract the data point and the mean and take the absolute value of that number. And then the last thing you do is you find the mean of those distances or those values. So you add up all of your differences, and then divide by how many differences you have, and that becomes your mean absolute deviation. So until next time, I'll talk to you later.